Granite Grove for Monday, August 7th, 2017 to order. We have a quorum and the agenda was properly posted.
Yes.
Okay. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 4 is public appearances, public's opportunity to speak about any subject that's not a specific agenda item. Anything tonight?
I have nothing.
Okay. All right. Discuss and consider the minutes of the regular village board meeting of July 17th. Any questions, additions, corrections? Anything?
I move to approve.
Okay. Is there a second? A motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? John's abstaining. Motion passes. Thank you. Item 6, unfinished business. First one is discuss and consider the Polco proposal. If you remember, they were here last time showing us, and I'll let Aaron and Matt talk about what they've given us so far.
Yeah, were there any, there wasn't a lot of discussion after the presentation, but I think their format and application could help us with citizen engagement on issues that would allow basically individual agenda items or topics to be presented to the public with our staff reports and allow us to survey the public and get feedback from them on that, which we can then include in our staff reports to you all. So just some additional information. And the funds for it wouldn't be levy funds. They would come from our cable franchise fee, our cable fund, which is at we have about $360,000 in that fund, and we bring in roughly $60,000 to $80,000 per year in franchise fees, and rarely use much of that. So the cost of this would be $3,000 per year, and we can withdraw with 30 days notice at any point. And our thought was maybe try it for 1 year and then see how you all like it, and provide feedback.
And this is linked through the village website then, or where would
it would be on there, and also basically they could the paper if they want to allow it to go on there. The results can be anywhere, and they'll be able to get us the information. So it wouldn't be just through our website; it would be on Facebook,
Sure.
all over. So, and Dane County's utilizing it, Verona, a couple other communities. And I know that Madison and Sun Prairie are in the process of.
I think we mentioned DeForest is using it.
I think DeForest and McFarland, Monona.
Okay.
Do we have any other upcoming projects that would utilize any of that cable fund? Anything where the $3,000 for this year, would it have any negative impact on anything else in the pipeline or any future projects that you see?
No. I know that Andrew, our cable coordinator, will be presenting a couple things to the Public Relations Committee soon, but with $360,000 in the reserve on that fund, and with 60 or so thousand per year coming in, and haven't been spending that much, in a long time, if ever, there shouldn't be any concern with $3,000.
Are there restrictions on that fund?
Yes.
What can it be spent on?
It can be spent on public relations, marketing, and cable, the equipment and things like that for this room. But that's
it.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's about
Not
it.
business development.
Right. No. So it's pretty restricted. So I think that's why it's gotten as high as it is, because it's actually sometimes maybe difficult to.
Do we set that rate, or does that set by at a state?
Well, the whole cable industry
relationship with municipalities has changed at different periods of time. And so that's really something that effectively the federal government and the cable companies have set, and it's simply negotiations with the cable company are very short.
Yeah.
Here you go, yeah.
Okay. And ultimately, our citizens pay for it, so.
Yeah,
It's kind of a-
but I mean, we do get, I mean, the fact that there was a movement, a strong movement to eliminate all cable fees at all. And so the fact that we have that, and, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, I think is proof of how long it's been in effect.
Yeah, okay.
Corey?
I guess I find it somewhat disturbing that we're receiving these kind of funds, and I understand it's not a tax levy, but indirectly, anybody that has cable is paying for this. Obviously, Charter is charging our citizens for the funds that are going there, and we don't have a good way to use it. Why are the costs so high? Why don't we just lower that to, so, because $362,000 is a lot of money that's been taken from our citizens through this fund. Charter is paying us this, right? Charter and Frontier. So indirectly, they're charging every citizen that has their service those monies, and it's sitting here doing nothing for us or them.
The, not only has the relationship changed, but what the money could be used for has changed over time. That was one of the reasons that the hotel tax came about, because hotel taxes, if you have a hotel, that money gets used for promotion and for business-related activities. And like I say, the village hasn't really had any choice in this matter with the cable company. So I understand your point.
They're paying us this. We're not invoicing them or anything. They're just sending this money to us. So it's governed not on the village level, but higher up.
State level, I think, is it?
Yeah, we don't
FCC,
invoice
yeah.
them, we get they send us something, I believe, quarterly.
Okay.
Do you know what, this might be too much to ask, but do you know what the average cost per villager would be in terms of the cable fees?
You said 60 grand a year. Yeah.
Make it do
60 to 80, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, if we're getting $80,000 a year divided by the number of
Right.
people, number of households, that's pretty expensive per household.
2,000 or 3,000 subscribers probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many actually have, I actually doubt that many have cable.
Yeah, might be closer to 1,500.
It's been quite a while since there's been any contract negotiations or even contact, but we'll check. I can check into that. And I saw that you had a.
Yeah.
Well, I assume we have a franchise agreement.
We did,
This
yep.
is the contract that we already have with them. They're performing, we're performing. I mean, what they're getting from us is a right to actually use the village's right-of-ways and other lands, and I don't know if maybe they're even attaching to things we have, I don't know, but I think that's why they pay it, is because they have a right then to use our property.
Back in the days when this was first going on, I can remember these negotiations because I was representing several different municipalities, and so they would come to each municipality and say, you have to, and we'd say, well, we'd like to do this, we can't do that. Because if I do that, then I got to change it for 36 other communities. Well, okay. And so those contracts were negotiated quite a long time ago. And again, I think to Mick's point, it does represent the payment for their use of our airwaves, and it's. I don't think that we can just that we just can ignore it.
Now, with this fee, is it folded into people's cable cost, or is it something in addition in like taxes and fees, where it could be, traced back to us? I mean, to the best of your knowledge.
How do you?
Just.
Is that itemized on the bill?
Yeah, is it itemized on the bill? Do
I mean, I haven't
people
seen
know
a
that
charter.
they're paying for it, or because I don't have charters.
I don't either.
Yeah. Is anybody familiar?
I don't have cables.
Don't have cables.
Yeah.
So I mean, if it's folded into the $30, $50, $60 a month charge that they normally pay, then that's not really an additional fee, they're gonna be charging that either way.
They are going to be charging it. I'm familiar with the fee because every month my wife checks to make sure that I haven't added channels that I'm not supposed to. So I have to be able to identify each cost, but you're right. I mean, those are fees that are mandated on them by the FCC.
Okay. I just didn't know
Yeah.
if we were the ones, if that was part of the agreement. It just, I think it's a shame that we've got that kind of funds in an account that we can't use basically for, except
Maybe-
very specified things. And that's just a lot of money that could go towards other things that are needed in the community, that's all.
You know, now that we're all aware of it, maybe we could make it a point to try to find more opportunities to use the money.
And that's true. I just hate to spend money, and that's what we're gonna do at that point. We're just gonna spend it to spend it, which is ridiculous.
I mean, we actually had to work with the auditors to even get to be able to spend it on a purpose like this. So it's pretty restricted. It was to be used at one point really just for our cable TV type purposes.
Otherwise, with those funds that they give us each year, that total would just get larger and larger and larger in the
It will.
bank.
It has been, yeah.
It has been, yeah.
Yeah, it seems really asinine that we can't use those monies.
Yeah.
It's sitting there build up there.
And we don't have
You know,
control over the process.
Right, so we need to do something with that.
80 grand a year, that's gonna accumulate pretty quickly.
I mean, we could strategically look at really like doing a real big promotional push on the village if we wanted to. I mean, that type of marketing and things like that we could do if we wanted to do something big that way. But I hear you, Troy. It's like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, it's
it's
just-
not something that we'd otherwise do, so it feels like you're just spending money to spend.
Yeah, to spend money does nobody any good, so.
Any other questions on it? I guess the thing that I liked, it sounded like they had a way to make sure somebody doesn't vote 3, 4, or 20 times. It was kind of restricted that way.
Mhm. You would see who's a
Yeah.
registered voter and that it's coming from the village. And
Right.
you'd still get feedback from outside, but you'd be able to take that into account as far as, the results, so.
I mean, I think it's probably worth trying it to see how much people use it and how much it helps us. If we don't like it, or if it's not worth the $3,000, we don't have to do it next year. But other communities seem to like it, I guess, from what I've,
It's very new, so.
yeah.
But, I mean, you wouldn't even have to, if we get a couple months in and it's just not very useful, you can put a 30-day notice on it. It's
Sure.
essentially, it's $250 a month.
So it's monthly, you don't pay $3,000 for the year or
It's
something?
a little through that.
That's a question I have. I don't see in here where it states when you pay, which really drives some of these other terms in here.
Yeah.
Right.
Now that when the board acts on this, then I'll ask for direction to review the contract. I haven't really, other than just kind of glance at it, pending what decision you make.
Sure. I don't remember from their presentation if they said it was 1 year, you just pay it all up front, or what was it by month? But
Just to clarify this from, in my mind, that 300-some thousand, who sets the limits, what we can spend that on?
I mean, the 3,000 we're talking about for this?
No, the 300-some thousand. I mean, that big pool of money that's there, who
Yes.
sets the limits on that?
FCC.
Well,
Yeah.
the limits on what it can be spent on?
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, I guess I don't know who sets that. The auditors say, they're restricted for such and such purposes, and
I think it originated with the FCC. And again, there's kind of a whole history on these franchise fees, because when they were first starting out, you had really small companies. I mean, and I actually represented a couple of them, and they were kind of mom and pop, and they lasted for 6 months, and then they just got bought out, and then maybe you became the attorney for the new company, and they got bought out. So you have an entirely different landscape now than you you did before. And that's one of the reasons from a cost point of view. Now you're hearing a lot of talk about broadband out in the rural areas because they're just not being served. It just wasn't economic enough for them.
Yeah, back when I moved to the village 21 years ago, I mean, cable was $26 a month. The community cable, or whatever it was called,
Yeah.
and they get bought out, and every year the price went up, and I dumped them.
Yeah. Any other discussion or questions on the Polco proposal?
I think as part of this approval, I would like to see us give direction to Lee to draft this agreement so that it's paid on a monthly basis. And the benefit of doing that is that there's a termination provision in here that allows this agreement to be terminated on 30 days' notice. So the way it's written now, they could take their $3,000, if we paid $3,000, they could terminate it after 30 days and they have $3,000. So I would suggest that we take a look at that and that we ask Lee to address that provision.
Before we approve in general, or just approve it?
As part of the approval, I would
Okay.
suggest that we also
Right, yeah,
include
so
that.
doing a motion with that stipulation then?
I would move that we approve the contract as provided, with the caveat that the village attorney address the issue of the payment of the fees to make it on a monthly basis.
And is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and a second then to approve contingent on the village attorney looking into the contract and making sure we can do this on a monthly basis. Any other questions or discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Our next item, 6B, is discuss and consider direction to staff relating to ownership of future stormwater outlets. We did have a developer that would like to speak on this. He wasn't sure he could make it at 6:30, but he should be here soon. So if it's okay with the board, we could move past that and go back to that, if that's all right?
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry, me.
7A then is discuss and consider sound permit for Travis Agnew. Chief, any issues with that one that you're aware of?
No.
Anybody have any comments or questions on Travis's application? If not, I'll move approval of the permit for Travis Agnew.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the sound permit for Travis Agnew. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. 7B is discuss and consider new operator license applications for licensing year July 2017 to June 2018 for Benjamin Leak, Charisma Schultz, Lindsay Frazier, Shalana Adams, and Alexis Ullman. Looks like, Chief, any issues with these people at all?
No, they all passed.
They're all passed. Any comments, questions from board members? I mean, we can take them all at once if you want.
Yeah, that's.
Okay? I will move.
Motion to approve.
Okay. Motion to approve, I'll second, for Benjamin Leak, Charisma Schultz, Lindsay Frazier, Shalana Adams, and Alexis Ullman. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. 7C is from our Chamber of Commerce. If you recall, there was a branding presentation that they did, and discuss and consider appointment to Cottage Grove Chamber's branding focus group. It sounds like they would like either a member of the board or a staff member, somebody just to participate in there trying to create a community identity for Cottage Grove. Anybody have any thoughts on good candidates, or if you're interested, or if you think, anybody from public relations maybe, or any thoughts?
I'd be interested as a member of the chamber.
Okay, you're in the chamber too?
Yeah, correct. So I worked quite a bit with Mike and other people
Okay.
at the chamber, so nobody objects.
Okay.
Throw my hat into the ring.
Sure. Is that okay with everybody if Forrest wants to
Sure.
come out? Okay, thanks for stepping up for us. I'll move approval of Forrest Crawford to the Cottage Grove Chamber's Branding Focus Group.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? welcome to another meeting.
Just a note on that, from Aaron and my standpoint, we appreciate Mike reaching out to us, but we certainly didn't want to be the role of, taking a board member. We thought that should be an open discussion with you all, and that's why we've had it on the board agenda.
Yeah, I've had my eye on it for a while now, since it was first
I think
mentioned.
it's been being a member of both board and the chamber, that's probably a good thing. Okay, discuss and consider rescheduling the September 4th, 2017 village board meeting to September 7th, which is a Thursday. Does that work, being the 4th is a Labor Day? Does that work for everybody? Thursday, September 7th?
Thursday's fine.
6:30? All right, I'll move we reschedule the meeting to September 7th, 2017.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second to reschedule the September 4th, 2017 village board meeting to September 7th, 2017. And any other discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. 8, reports from village boards, commissions, and committees. Pier Court Steering Committee, I was at that meeting. I was really impressed at the amount of data that they give, how they track these people. And they're looking to continue this. I think Pier Court's been a real success. I've not been on that particular committee before, but I was very impressed with the Briar Patch people. And Chief, anything that you can say about Pier Court? I mean, you have usually Lieutenant Wagner usually participates.
Yeah, he's usually the one that goes there because he stays for municipal court afterwards. But
Okay.
yeah, it's a good program. I'm glad we have it here in Cottage Grove, and it seems to have a good effect on just instead of writing tickets and having the parents pay the fine, the kids
Right.
actually have some skin in the game by doing different tests to get their fines reduced.
Yep. One of the things that they talked about was possibly, if they have the funds in the future, having somebody who can track when the kids are actually adults and what happens when they're adults, and trying to see what the influence of Pier Court is on recidivism later. And
Jack, I met with the chief today on a couple other issues, and we were talking about that, and my suggestion was that we contact the representative from Briar Patch, who is a Cottage Grove resident, and whose name escapes me.
Jay Kiefer?
Jay Kiefer.
Yeah.
And just ask him or his organization to work with us in terms of doing that, because he's always expressed the desire to, if there's some information that we're not giving you that you want, we will try to do that. So Dan we were gonna talk to him and see what we can do.
Okay. And the one question that Judge Hetfinger had for me after the meeting, I guess, and I didn't have the answer to, is when the kids do pay the monetary fines, I guess, where does that go, or how is that accounted for? I didn't have an answer for him. I know that once in a while there's a monetary fine involved instead of community service, and I don't know if they put the money in a certain fund or if it's given to the state, or how they even do that. So,
I mean, we would only get a certain portion. Like when someone pays a ticket, not all of that money comes to the village. We get a small
Right.
part of it. But it would go to our general fund.
okay. I was just curious how that's tracked. All right, Deer Grove EMS Commission, and John and Troy.
Yeah, we met Thursday, the 20th. Year-to-date, let me see, there's 86 calls in June compared to 81 the same month last year. Year-to-date calls are ahead 21 versus last year, on pace to hit 1,000 for the year. Volunteers provided 726 hours in June, slightly down from 786 in June of 2016. We've got a member that's gone through a recent extensive reentry program that's back on staff now. The Consolidation Committee met on July 26th. I'm not part of that, so I'm not sure what the results of that were. Apparently, the overhead door at Station 1 was damaged when it came down on one of the ambulances. Damage to the ambulance was limited to a couple of scrapes on the wrap. The door had to be had to be submitted as an insurance claim.
Okay.
And then on the other ambulance, and again, you get new equipment, we like to put little dings and dents in them. Got involved in a little scrape with more wrap damage. This Murphy's Law, you
Yeah,
know?
last time we got a new ambulance, it got caught in a hailstorm and got
Yeah.
pounded up pretty good. So.
There was an agenda item to discuss, consider proposal for paid on-premise staffing. And because next year is a contract year with the union, that was tabled until July of 2018. We accepted the chief's resignation. And we've got a national search out now for his replacement, including advertisements, local newspapers, as well as trade publications and posting sites. The hiring, there's a hiring committee that's put together, one representative from the village, myself, the town, and then the village of Deerfield. Chief is going to be reviewing all of the different applicants, kind of screening, and then giving them to us to talk to them. The deadline for submission is September 1st. The committee will screen all the applicants and recommend those proceed with an assessment center on September 24th. Based on that result, the committee would recommend 2 to 3 applicants for the commission to review and possibly a special meeting sometime in October. The salary range was changed, bumped up a little bit comparatively to the other areas, so the range now is $66,000 to $86,000. There's also an item to discuss increased staffing for 2 ambulances. And with our encouragement, the 2018 budget can be developed to include some LTE staffing to provide a step in the direction for a second ambulance staffing. No action was taken on that item. And the two new ambulances were over budget by $30 total. Next meeting is on Thursday, August 17th, and one thing that's in the agenda item, I guess, is 2 things: 2018 budget and also update on the chief's hiring process.
Okay.
One other note: emergency government meeting got moved from last week to this week on Wednesday the 9th due to other commitments I'm unable to attend. So hopefully someone from the village will be able to.
That's not the tabletop though that you're talking about for September?
No, that's in September.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is just a regular meeting.
So what's it set for then?
Pardon?
17th, you said?
The meeting is Wednesday the 9th, and then the actual all-day Saturday is September, what do we got here? I think it's September, I believe the 23rd.
Okay.
So that's going 8 a.m. to 8 till 8 or 8 till 5 p.m., 8 in the morning, to all-day event at Hydrate Chemical. Or at EOC with, again, an exercise with an actual train car there, leaking some fluid out, and go through the whole process.
Troy, this is a question about the hiring. Did you say 2 to 3 finalists is what they're?
Yeah, well, the chief's going to narrow it down somewhat. We're going to review all applicants, and then the hiring committee will review the applicants, and then we were going to bring in the 2 to 3 who we feel are the most qualified to go through an assessment.
Okay. Depending on how many apply, may I suggest ultimately interviewing 4 or 5, because just from experience from hiring, you never know if your top candidate might turn it, so it's better to maybe have a couple extra.
No, that's perfect. No, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't do this every day.
Sure. Yeah.
It sounds like he's going to be around until November before
He actually is basically given notice through the end of the year.
Okay.
And he would hope that if, when we find the candidate, he can help them get up to speed, but he's willing to, I guess, stay through the end of the year. If we get someone on board right away and we don't need him, he's willing to take that step back at that
Just a
point.
smoother transition.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Utility Commission. Utilities, that, okay.
So, at the utility commission meeting, we took a vote increasing the utility rates to help fund the expansion and replacement of a force main. that's been causing some issues. The key thing that we identified as an issue was the fact that we were having to have people come up there almost every day or multiple times a day to clean out any backflow of stuff. And I discussed with the rest of the commission, the possibilities for damage and the effect that it would have on the rest of the village should this be not treated or somebody not get out there in time. And I thought that the very modest increase in the fixed sewage charge, and it looks like the sewer usage charge was far more beneficial, considering we would prevent any backflow into 1855 and that whole complex,
Yeah.
as well as Hydrite.
Okay.
And it's as low as it is because this was foreseen for a while and was planned as part of TID 7's projects, which is picking up. Can you go over the percentages? Maybe go through, JJ has a memo in the packet kind of outlining this.
Essentially, the TID's going to pick up 50% of the lift station upgrade and 25% of the force main work. And that's why there's no action item tonight, because Greg from Ellers just recommended that this be incorporated in the financial management plan for the year and just be voted on at that time. But Utility Commission voted to move forward and essentially authorize the rate increase portion of it. And the packet showed the percentages given to us by Baker Tilly, but at that meeting she did recommend that we just wait until Madison Met gives our annual treatment cost to, and then just incorporate it all into just one. She said it just makes more sense to get it all in one rate increase, most likely the first of the year. But yeah, you see more about the TID cost during the financial management plan discussion.
All right. Next is Park, Rec, and Forestry.
Yeah, our July 22nd or 26th meeting, we had some citizen input on Japanese lady beetles. They're damaging a lot of trees, and Sean is on top of it. He's been actively treating the city trees. And we discussed the treatment plans, there's a few different methods. Sean has really been studying this and implementing it. So we're trying to save as many trees as we can. It's not as harmful as emerald ash borer, but it is, the aesthetics of it is really bad. I mean, I don't know if anybody else has had it. But especially hard on linden trees and birch trees. But linden trees, we have a pretty high concentration of linden trees, which led to another discussion of how trees are selected and why we have concentrations. And the issue is we kind of let the builders pick from a very, very long list of trees, and so they can do whatever they want with that. And what we didn't actually have an amendment or a motion on this, but we will on the next meeting, where we discuss, where we, instead of having it fit that list fixed by the board, we wanted to give the forestry management person the discretion to give more direction to the builders on the list of trees. So that's, we're going to do it at our next meeting. Then
Couple
Aaron
things to
and
add.
Sean.
Couple things to add to that topic,
Yeah,
Jim.
please.
Just with too long of a list, what ends up happening is, the developer obviously goes out and finds what the cheapest option is during that season.
Yeah.
And then they plant all of that same
Yeah.
tree, which could be fine, but then when there's a infestation issue, it can
Right.
devastate the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And it's actually, would be easier in the ordinance to just say, come see a referred list that's approved at Parks and Rec offices.
Perfect.
And then that, annually can be adjusted for whatever trees would be best at that time. So, then maybe we could put lindens back on, but for now we want to get that
Yeah.
off. And that's
Yeah.
just going to change. We don't need to be having ordinance revisions
Right.
constantly. So
That's exactly
Yeah.
that's exactly the direction the committee kind of went in, and And Sean and Aaron also discussed the plan. Forgive me for not knowing what the plan was called.
Park and open space.
Park and open space plan. And we made a few tweaks to that, but it looks really good. And that was the meeting. Okay.
Fair enough, thank you. Joint Fire Department Committee.
There you go. So we had a pretty productive meeting. Chris at the town is the new president and I am the new secretary. There was discussion about potentially reviewing and working on our agreement with the fire department to give the town and village more power in selecting, the chief and a few other items. I'm not sure if that's really going to go anywhere, but I did want to mention it. And beyond that, it was pretty standard stuff.
Okay.
The only thing I'd add to that, then, Forrest, is we are still in the running for the AFG grant, which we have turnout gear and a bunch of other things that, to the tune of over $200,000 that we're trying to get for the fire department. There's been several rounds, but you'd be notified by now if you weren't in consideration.
Okay.
So there'll be several more, so hopefully, cross our fingers that we're one of those municipalities selected. Volunteer recruitment, there are 5 new volunteers. They're all in various stages of onboarding. We briefly discussed replacing some of the vegetation in front of that municipal building, the emergency building, in the fall. There's several bushes and stuff that are just beat up, so we chatted about that. And then we also talked about the potential of making a few office moves and some arrangements within the building to better serve the fire department, secure some certain documents and things like that for the fire department. Our next meeting is September 25th, and then we'll be covering budgets and all that good stuff at that point.
Okay.
Anything else for us?
No, that was it. Thanks, Tom.
Okay.
Sounds good, thank you. Matt, big landfill.
Yeah, it's me again. So, we had a presentation about the MW3 well on the landfill. It's going to need to be replaced, and we were presented 3 different options. The first being that we could have the replacement installed within 10 feet of the existing well. We wouldn't require any plan modification from the DNR to do that, and it is the lowest risk due to the fact that we're unlikely to encounter additional landfill waste. There hasn't been any significant detection of any contaminants at that location, and so we looked at that, and we also considered moving the well about 150 feet north of the existing well. We can do that in one of 2 ways. The DNR said that if we wanted to just move it, we wouldn't necessarily need to modify the plan, which has a whole bunch of extra issues associated with it.
Sure.
So I'd be happy to discuss in detail if anybody wants to afterwards. But and then the other option was to move it with a plan modification, and potentially the plan modification could result in some significant annual cost savings for the monitoring of the landfill. But we were a little bit nervous about moving it and then uncovering some sort of additional issue, which might require us to, refile a new plan and update everything and jump through a bunch of hoops. So what the committee voted on was to move the well but not modify the plan at this point. Then after the well is moved and we've got an opportunity to do a little bit of initial testing to see if any of those extra issues might arise, then we're going to consider redoing the plan in order to save some money along the line.
All right.
And there was a long landfill meeting.
Yeah, got to monitor every month. Okay.
Was there anything else?
They gave us a map
They
that
did give us a map, yeah.
that I turned in,
Okay.
and it's an older map, and they said they're going to be updating that map with a recent survey that will include more information on the map than it presently does.
Okay.
So that was the only additional thing.
Sounds good. Reports from village officers, Troy?
No report.
Okay, Mick?
No report.
Okay, Forrest?
I'll keep it short. There's been some online chatter about people having cars broken into, and there's a farm stand right outside of the village in the town that had a lockbox broken open and stuff. So just to let you guys all know, make sure you're locking your doors and closing your garage at night and stuff, because there's been, I guess, a growing issue I've seen online.
Yeah, it happened in our neighborhood, and we took it upon ourselves to notify our neighbors about the occurrence.
Yeah. It's amazing how many people leave their sliding patio door screen shut and that's it.
Mhm.
Right now.
Or their car doors on.
Yeah. That's it. All right. Larry, or James, I'm sorry.
No report.
Okay, Larry?
No report.
All right, John?
No report?
Okay, under my name, you'll see a couple things there. One is discuss and, well, just discuss basically. This is the agenda item request form. Basically, if somebody wants to put something on the agenda, normally I work with Matt and we put together the agenda, but trustees can also have items put on the agenda. So we don't just make this up in a vacuum. If anybody wants anything, on here you'll see I wrote NA just a sample form. So I basically just filled it out so you can kind of see what it looks like. I'll give those guys a couple and pass these down that way. And it's just something to make sure we know who wanted it on there. It gives you a chance to give some background and why you want that agenda item on. There's a spot for a trustee to second it, because if a trustee wants something on, you can either go through myself or have somebody else second it, just to make sure that it gets on there. And I guess at this point, we're looking for input. I printed that off, and it was a formatting issue. It's supposed to be a one-page form, I guess, but Matt can talk to you about it. I think it's going to be like a fillable form for you to do on your computer, so we're not chasing paper around either. Currently,
Right,
it's been-
yeah, we can send that in an email, and then however detailed someone wants to make it, it could be longer
Yep.
or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just think it'd be quicker than various emails trying to figure out who wanted what on and what month it was on and why it was there. And it kind of gives it a little more.
And is that priority level, Jack? Is that like your opinion is for the item? What?
Yeah, I
you
just
feel
put
is the-
3. I mean, you can put, if it's something that needs to be addressed next month, or I just put 3 because it's just something to keep on the radar. And if we have
So like if the agenda was really packed or something like that,
Right.
if you picked a 1 or 2, maybe it would be on a following agenda or something like that.
Yeah.
Where if it was a 4 or 5, maybe
Yeah,
put it right on the next agenda.
exactly.
Okay.
So that's just something, and I'll, if anybody has any suggestions, I guess just go ahead and email me, let me know, but I just wanted to kind of have a system to organize stuff that people want on the agenda. And so
Jack, I'll send you a copy of what the ordinance committee came up with,
Okay.
which is very similar, except that what we had in there was, we asked people to think about answering the questions who, what, when, where, and how does, why do you want this? How big of an issue is it? Those kinds of things. So that's,
Sure.
just so those questions get addressed. But
Right, okay. And then the other item that I had on there, and this goes back to what Forrest was talking about at the Joint Fire Committee. A while back, recently, I was approached by the Town of Cottage Grove leadership, and he asked about looking into this. And currently, if I understand correctly, and go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong, the fire department personnel are 501c3, they're like a subcontractor. We hire them to operate our equipment, which we own. We own the trucks, the building. We hire them to operate the stuff. And every 2 years, I believe, the association, the Firemen's Association, votes for a fire chief. I don't know what the current qualifications are, what they use for criteria, but what we were looking to do is just formalize, because there are national standards or state standards, just to kind of say if you want to run for chief and be voted chief, you should at least have Fire 1, Fire 2 from MATC, a little bit of budget experience, that kind of thing. Not looking to change anything with the association or anything, just kind of since it's our equipment, we should have a little bit of say in having a qualified person running it, if that works for people. Does that make sense? It's also on the agenda for the town tonight too. Chris Hampton and I talked about it. Same wording, same agenda item. So we met last week, I think it was, with Chris, talked about it.
Just real quickly, Jack, so everyone understands, in 1996/97, there was the municipality, the town and the village and the volunteer fire department met, and the volunteer fire department at that time was not really a recognized entity in Wisconsin. It was kind of this hodgepodge of different entities. And so they hired an attorney who got their paperwork all taken care of. And then the town and the village created a fire district. And it consisted of the town and the village. And then the fire district hired the volunteers to provide services. And now I think Pleasant Springs is part of that fire district. But, and then every year the fire department comes to the municipalities and says, this is how much we need from the municipality. And so that's just how it works in terms of, it's not a village department, it's not a town department, it's the volunteers. But I think the town and the village jointly own all of the fire equipment in different percentages according to what they contributed. And I'm not sure what that is.
Yep. And so, as I said, this is just something to, and the contract itself, if you look at the original contract from 1997, it's obviously an IBM Selectric typewriter. It's not, it's been around a while. Not that there's anything wrong with anything else. We're just kind of looking to update it with that kind of a thing. And we're not asking that we come up with the criteria. That's why it's directing or asking the Joint Fire Committee to look into what the criteria should be. I mean, I'm sure Chief Boxrecker could come up with something, or the Joint Fire, so we'd like them to set the criteria and then just say, you can run for chief if you have this background. If that works for everybody.
I don't think it's just chief, it's any of the officers,
Right.
Ultimately, because then the chief appoints. So I think, you also want to make sure that the appointees would be qualified as well.
Sure.
Okay, so I'll move that we request the Joint Fire Committee to review this agreement for fire protection services.
Okay, second it.
Okay, motion and a second to request that the Joint Fire Committee review the agreement for fire protection services. Any other questions or discussion?
Who seconded that?
Larry.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. Attorney Lee Boucher, report on emergency government ordinance.
I'm in the process at the direction of the board, and primarily from Troy, who is on the emergency government committee, and that is to review our current ordinance and whether it's in compliance with state statute. The statutes did change, and I think the way that it was presented to Troy was that the town was also going to be doing this contemporaneously with us. That apparently is not quite the case, because I actually talked to their attorney, and she didn't really have any idea what I was talking about in terms of making these changes. So we're going to follow up with a request, to say, well, what is the situation? Are you going to look at this or not? I think that there are things in the agreement that I would recommend that the board consider changing. We want to make sure, in fact, right now, the town emergency government ordinance and the village emergency government ordinance don't really line up. Right. There are some things that have to be changed, and there are also some things in the statutes that would have to be addressed. But and Troy made the comment tonight when we were talking beforehand, is if they want us to do the work, that's fine, but then they should be part of the bill, pay part of the bill.
Correct.
Okay.
Good. All right, anything else, Lee?
No.
Okay. Administrator Matt Easy?
I believe in front of you tonight, the financials through June, just to give you an idea on the timing of these. They get entered into and reconciled by Deb, usually by the 20th of the following month. So for instance, by the 20th of August, then we'll be through July. So there's always a little bit of a lag, but they'll get these to you periodically. Certainly shoot for quarterly, moving forward in that. Just the biggest item in here, everything's pretty well tracking with budget or under budget. The big thing you'll notice in revenues is that we haven't reconciled taxes yet. So once we get the final payments from, so Dane County, it handles that second half payment.
Sure.
And we enter it all at once instead of doing it piecemeal. So that $2.7 million that you'll see as one of the first items there, actually the first item in the revenue column, that'll be in full. So everything's on track and looking good. So, and then similarly on that note, as JJ mentioned, the financial management plan, that'll kind of be the start of kicking the budget off, and we're looking at the finance committee meeting on August 29th. So we just kind of confirmed that date with our financial advisor. So hopefully we have a quorum for that night, and that'll kind of get things started. 5:30 for that, I believe. Troy's on that, Jack, and Jim. Are you on finance?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I'm sorry, what is the meeting?
the 29th
Thank you.
at 5:30.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's here then, Matt, right?
Yes. That's all I have for now.
All right. Director of Planning and Development, Aaron, update on the Monona Grove School District growth plan.
Yeah, given some of the ramping up of interest in residential development in the village, we invited Dan Olson, the Monona Grove Superintendent, and Jared Rosing, the district's business director, to come to our plan commission on Wednesday. Unfortunately, that had a conflict with their school board meeting. As a second option, we asked if they were available tonight, but they had a committee meeting tonight. But I did have Dan answer a few questions for us, and I thought as long as we had the information, I'd share that. But I think I'll have some follow-ups to some of his responses here also. But specifically, we asked about Shady Grove, since that's the kind of next subdivision up in the approval process. We asked if, in his opinion, the addition of that subdivision would negatively impact the district's ability to educate students at their present level of quality, and they said no. We asked if any district schools are now considered to be over capacity, and they said Glacial Drumlin is over its functional capacity. So I guess I'll follow up and how much and what does functional capacity mean exactly. Would the addition of Shady Grove cause any other district schools to become over capacity? They said no. Their recent enrollment study projects around 0.7 students per unit in a planned neighborhood development. So about 75 students over a period of a few years would have a minimal impact on their enrollments. We asked if Shady Grove was accounted for in their current enrollment studies and facility planning, and they said yes. And we asked generally, does the district benefit from residential growth in the village? And they said financially they benefit from moderate and steady growth. So again, I think a follow-up is what does moderate and steady mean to them? But that's the information we got in this go-around.
Okay. It sounds like there's some of this available on their website too, as a kind of a public.
They have their full study on the website.
Okay. Sure.
It might be some benefit in having them come to one of our meetings, so I guess if there continues to be a conflict, if there's interest in doing a special meeting for that.
Maybe we mentioned Thursday,
That's true.
the Thursday September meeting that is on a different day, that might work.
See if we have a meeting when they don't.
Right.
All right.
And, you know, some of the other things too that when they talk about the financial benefits to them in growth is they have more revenue streams than the village has. We rely pretty much all on property tax, and they get additional shared revenue per pupil. So, you know, they are helped that way, and then also they also have a much larger chunk of the pie. So when there's for instance, if the Shady Grove development was ultimately approved and fully developed, when that's done, it'll be about $20 to $25 million in tax base, and they have a high percentage of that. So anyway, that's what I think they, will clarify, but I think that's what they're referring to when they talk about the financial benefits.
Okay. All right. Good, thanks. Anything else, Aaron? Chief Labor, anything?
Yeah, we had National Night Out last week, Tuesday, down at Fireman's Park. I would estimate several hundred people came through. It was a great chance for local law enforcement and firefighters were there too to interact with us and get to know us and see the equipment we use, and gave them free hot dogs and lemonade, and it was a lot of fun and enjoyable.
Saw you make a second run for lemonade, so it must be.
Yeah, went through 15 gallons of lemonade, 500 hot dogs.
Okay. Good. All right, sounds good. All right, and Andrew Berg is here, so we can go back up to our item 6B. Discuss and consider direction to staff relating to ownership of future stormwater outlets. I know Andrew was interested in being part of the discussion here, so if you want to come up here, Andrew, and what you already heard from Mike Maloney and JJ a little bit about our outlots. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess before we do that, it was brought to my attention that maybe the font was a little small. Maybe sometimes I have pretty good eyesight, so I thought the font was all right. But did anyone have trouble viewing the spreadsheet that I included in the packet? If you did, I have some larger printouts if anyone would want one. Okay.
Oh, sure.
Well, if you print it out on a Post-it note, it's hard.
Well, it just, I think the ridicule of this was.
So I just, basically with this, I just sent out a email survey to the region just to get feedback on how others handle ownership of stormwater outlots. And as one would guess, I mean, there's not a uniform, everyone does it a little bit differently. About half or so of the responses or come from communities that have a stormwater utility, so that's not really a direct comparable to us since we don't have one. And the state law has changed on how those are created and the financial implications of doing so. To do that now, we would also have to reduce our tax levy. So it wouldn't be, it would basically be a neutral type cost, and it's expensive to start one. So it makes it kind of probably not worthwhile. And they're ultimately also, they can be fairly controversial with the business community. So just given those things under the current format, it's probably not best to pursue that. And like, as you can see from the other responses, it's a mix. The village's current way that they've essentially have always been doing things here in Cottage Grove is that if it's a single property owner, then it's private.
Yep.
And if it's a subdivision where there's 80 to 100 property owners, it's been public.
Okay.
That's just the way it's been done. And then you can see through Mike Maloney's memo covers kind of the history, a lot of good information on public versus private, and kind of the pros and cons involved with that. And then from a public works perspective, coming from the director of public works, what what his thoughts and perspective is on the issue in there. So if you have additional questions, maybe, Andrew.
I know, Andrew, you
Given-
developed in other communities too, so I'm sure you see different iterations of the outlot policy, and I guess if you want to share your insight on if you think we're doing it the way it should be
Well,
done.
thank you. I appreciate it for allowing me to speak to it late in the agenda. I just, I saw that it was under discussion, and I wanted to be able to maybe just weigh in a little bit with the experience that we've had here in the village and in other communities as well. As Matt noted, and I didn't get to hear JJ and Mike's comments, but historically, our practice for 25 years now out here has been to build what you direct us to build, essentially. The stormwater management plan that I just handed Mike was for our 3rd Ave West Lawn neighborhood. It's about roughly an inch thick, and the basins, detention, infiltration, conveyance swales, stormwater conveyance via pipe, all those systems are driven off of the stormwater analysis and design, and then engineered by us and in and out of house, and then reviewed by Public Works and by your consulting engineering staff. So it goes through a pretty lengthy process before we ever build anything. And then during the planning process, we've historically created outlots, which by definition means non-buildable lots for structures. We have had multi-use outlots in the past where there's been integration of public facilities beyond just stormwater management, park facilities, things of that nature, equipment, benches, playground. And we go all the way back to the days of dry basins, which you don't get to build anymore.
Right.
But it's worked really well, the standard of practice wherein a system, be it a detention basin or infiltration basin, whatever it might be, that takes water from multiple sources has been treated as a public domain item, where it's owned by the village and maintained by the village at the point in time in which it's accepted by you guys and taken from us. And historically, we've dragged our feet for quite a while before we've had that transition occur.
Sure.
To make sure that everything's functioning the way it's supposed to be and in place. And then the ones that are owned and maintained privately have historically been single ownership. And I'll use, one of the projects we brought in last year, Rainbow, is a good example of that. You have a complex system below grade underneath parking facilities because of concerns about safety with all the children there, as well as space constraints on the site. That those two factors made surface system not their choice. So that's privately owned, privately maintained. But it's a single source of water that feeds that system. So I think the practice has worked really well. We haven't had trouble, frankly. I think the only piece of trouble I can recall in these 25 years is the one wetland that got flushed by the field to the north when they graded in the time of year they should have. And it's been a
Conservancy Court.
Yeah, 30 acres north of that 1 acre interior wetland, because that's not a stormwater system. It's not designed to be any type of detention, retention. It's a point in the landscape where the water flows through and it flattens out, and thus it was a interior perched wetland. But beyond that, I just don't have any recollection of trouble that we've had. And that really wasn't, I don't think that was anything to do with us, frankly.
Okay.
The experiences I've had outside of the community where I've been near facilities that were publicly or that were privately held hasn't been as good. Our East Lawn neighborhood on the east side of Madison is adjacent to the Nelson Platte. The Nelson Platte, pre, during, and post the Great Recession, failed, and they had detention facilities, infiltration facilities on outlots that were held privately. And there was a lot of language on paper and recorded documents and maintenance agreements, easements, et cetera, that that dictated what happened when this happened and that and the other thing happened. But ultimately, the developers went down, and then it turned over to the homeowners association. But the homeowners association, absent the developers, failed. There was no monetary system to support the construction or the maintenance of the facilities. And the facilities failed, finally. And Madison didn't even, look big, so they had a lot of stuff. And they didn't even realize that this was occurring. And I brought it to their attention. I said,
these basins in this neighborhood adjacent to us, nobody's doing anything. They're full of trees and weeds and silted in. And they were unaware of it. And ultimately, they being the city of Madison, ended up having to buy those outlots from Anchor Bank who had foreclosed on them and taken them from the developers in Nelson. And it was kind of a big ugly mess, and it ended up coming full circle right back to Madison anyhow. And during that period of time, our development next door to that, unfortunately, had to live with facilities in a kind of shoddy condition. So, I guess from my the other part of this that obviously brings my attention is it says future stormwater basins, and we had a long history out here, and we intend to have a continued history. I have an annexation petition I'll be bringing in before you folks soon. It's the same acreage that we brought into the village's urban service area in 2016, and also developed and built the stormwater, or the water main system for the high pressure system to serve that northwest corridor. So I've been out there walking the land in the rain, these heavy rains. We've had a lovely spring and summer. And I think we strung 6 days together for the first time since February last week, so it was amazing. But we have a big future together in partnering in these developments, and I guess our 2 cents would be that what's historically been the case has worked well, and I would hope that we can move forward in that fashion still. And like I say, I walked it during a lot of these heavy rains to see what was happening. I walked all the land that we own and developed, and have a pretty strong understanding of what water's doing. This is pretty well scrutinized in Dane County.
Yeah.
And you have to answer any question if anyone have any.
Questions for Andrew? I'd just like to hear everybody's perspective, because even Mike's presentation was a learning experience. I wasn't sure what all the purposes were for outlots. And I knew it was water drainage, but he said possible future wells, any kind of parks like you said, or whatever.
There's a lot. I mean, I think that the only items that are, it's really specifically stormwater outlots that are, I mean, for maintenance. I mean, it's pretty. The other ones are more cut and dry. I mean, if it's a park or a well or a lift station. But I believe the discussions on those memos though happened at Plan Commission both times, so it would probably be beneficial. Maybe Andrew, if you wouldn't mind, if there aren't any other questions for Andrew, and then if you guys have some questions for JJ or Mike on their memos, because that wasn't discussed, I don't think, at the board. So,
all right. Well, thank you, Andrew. I appreciate
Thanks
it.
for listening.
Okay.
Maybe.
Any other comments, questions on this item?
Well, I was just inviting Mike and JJ to go up there if.
Okay. Hey.
Well, one question I have is how many stormwater detention facilities are we currently responsible for in the village?
Off the top of your head.
Was that part of that 91 figure that we came up with?
That included all outlots, so it's lots.
Actually, that was all parcels. Like, for example, Fireman's Park is made up of 12 or 15 parcels. So
we can
in the neighborhood of 30.
I see 25. Yeah.
Okay. 27.
I mean, I think it'd be a good idea to put a map together also that would show these on a map. We can easily do that through our GIS system, and but anyway.
Currently on private, we have 18 maintenance agreements with businesses or industry and community that have their own private ones. So that's where we are on that number.
Okay.
I guess my question is the ones that we do not have a source of income, like an agreement with a private owner. What concerns me is the age of them. I have a sense that there may be quite a few of them that were put in around the same time. So I'd like to get a sense, I think, of when we think maintenance will occur. Are we looking at in 20 years or 15 years just getting hit with 15 of them having to be rebuilt? And if so, what are we doing to try to address that now so it's not the residents that live here today and move out that benefit and the ones that move in get smacked with these expenses? And that's what I'm trying to figure out in my mind, really, kind of where we're at, what we should be doing in the future to try to address the maintenance, if we're going to keep them and take them on.
I think anytime jump in, but I think the first step for us would be to update our stormwater model. We're long overdue for that. But then from what I do know, we need that tool to tell us, because certain different ponds and different structures are affected in different ways. One, it may be 10 years and something has to be done. Others could last over 50 years where they're just not accumulating sediment. They're still treating the water as you expect. So our first step is a stormwater model to tell us what we need to know. And then from there, Matt and I have been discussing ways that we can, without knowing specifically what pond when, but start to kind of treat them almost like a capital fund for this, since we don't have a stormwater utility. Try and have that money there, like you said, with a model or.
I believe it qualifies capital, so it might technically be maintenance, but at the cost that it would be to dredge, we can incorporate this, and we could just change the title of our capital equipment plan to, capital equipment and stormwater projects or something like that, and then budget a certain amount every year. Some years you might not use it at all, but it would carry over to, in a planned fashion that could pay for it when we need it.
So if we had the stormwater model, we could budget more appropriately for the maintenance.
Yeah, and something, I guess, just in front of that, we've got, we're going to do the outfall inspections, and when we're doing that, we'll have the map of all the basins, so that's something that'll be coming up, this end of this summer, that we'll be completing that, so.
So those would not be part of
The
capital.
model.
Those would be too small of expenses to justify
Yeah, and that.
budgeting and essentially taxing, but saving that money. That would fall under more general maintenance that should be happening
Sure.
more frequently.
When we complete that, we'll have the information all for the board on, and Public Works on, where all the, the conditions of all the ponds.
So Matt, is that something that we're budgeting for next year to do then, is to really put this plan, or to actually budget for the work to be done to put this plan together so we can figure out what our capital needs will be over this?
It's been proposed before, it just hasn't made the cut.
Do you have an idea about how much you think it?
The stormwater model?
I believe last year Eric's estimate was 55,000. I'll ask him again here shortly.
So we'll be, as part of the budget process, reevaluating our reserves. We are, we obviously wouldn't want to affect our bond rating that was just increased, but if we can, strategically stay within line there, we're comfortable with, with guidance from the financial advisor for one-time project costs for something like that, or conservancy court, or even the revaluation that's been discussed, those types of one-time items that won't be reoccurring in the budget would make sense if there's available reserve funds that could be used. So we'll look into that. Otherwise, we would have to increase the levy for it, or cut somewhere else in the budget.
There's a secondary effect of getting the stormwater model done, and that's, it affects your contribution to MMSD's phosphorus program. I don't remember the annual rate we're at right now.
17,000.
Okay, and that's based on kind of a wild assumption, that, from Medicine Met on that. And you can challenge that each year with what the report has, but we don't have an update to give them at this point.
When was the last time the report was done?
It was actually done in 2004. In 2009, we looked at the improvement side of it, but the actual study hadn't been done since then.
So is there a recommendation on how often it should be done? And are we way outside of that?
What we have now is, there's a lot more basins in the community. The modeling criteria has been changed several times since then to a point where it's kind of stabilized now. And so to be compliant with the DNR and frankly MMSD and their new phosphorus program, what we have isn't something they can use from back then.
I guess it concerns me that we're bringing more, we have more and more of these detention facilities coming in, and we have no plan. How do you really know that they're even going to meet the needs that we have? I mean, how do you know that what Andrew's building is going to be sufficient and you don't have a plan to even consider it under?
Each independent development's coming in to meet the Dane County ordinance, which we've adopted in Chapter 163, and that's this 80% reduction in total suspended solids. So there is a water quality component in each one. What's happening to the main channels is what the study can help us, tweak those plans, but it won't change the ordinance on the minimum requirements of each development. It's what's the actual results coming out of the village for your discharge rate, and that's affecting your sewer rate just on the phosphorus, and it's also preventing us from having a complete plan of the village. So.
Well, follow-up question. Then how does that plan really fit with the existing detention facilities we have as to the life of those facilities, the maintenance of those facilities? How does the plan really help us in that respect?
Well, the first thing we have to do in the plan is review the existing conditions. And, in the past, we knew, like in 2009, when I said we kind of did an update there to look at the projects, we saw that the Thaden Pond, which is kind of behind the post office, was filling up with silt. And that's one of the biggest basins in the village as far as the amount of water in the village that's coming to it. And we knew that was a key project in the village to get to the regulations. Since that time, the regulations changed once by the governor, and now are changing again by the federal government as far as the TMDO. So they went down, and now they're going back up again. So as far as that goes, we knew some major elements that were out there, and in 2004 we studied the dry basins. We made recommendations to the village on you could convert all these little dry basins to wet basins, or you could fix this one basin and kind of solve your problem at that time. But we haven't had an update on that since then.
Mick, when I first started here, the board at that time, if you brought up stormwater regulations, they would be upset. They basically just didn't want to do anything with that at all. Until with the regulations changing, they were just like, we're not touching that at all. So that was the direction at that time. So that's probably why the study wasn't, updated beyond 2009.
Well, there was also quite a bit of resistance. I mean, just to underline what Matt said, just before he came, we had a village president who said we are not going to comply with the DNR. The DNR for a year put up with it, but not after that. And I'd also point out that, just so the board knows, when I first became village attorney, there were no developer agreements, and in fact, the Crawford plat had been developed, and it was an example of where the developer failed, the plat failed. They handed me this glob of paper, and they said, "Oh, these are the performance bonds," all of which had expired like a year before. And it ended up where the village ended up paying a third of the cost, the property owners paid a third of the cost, and the Randall Bank was still in existence at that time. And so really from that point forward, it's been a point of emphasis to have the developer agreements to make sure that they do get enforced in terms of these things. I think Andrew can attest to that, but at the time, there was nothing.
So the first key is the stormwater model.
Well, there's the outfall inspections that MSA is going to enforce just as a small line item in the budget this year. There's baby steps, but
agree with what Nick said, if we don't start planning for it, it could be a bigger wall when we hit it. Any other comments, questions? So the next step is just taking those inspections and getting the mapping done. And we have a picture basically of what we need to do. Okay. All right.
So I'm assuming that we're just tabling this item then for now? to
I would
this?
think until we have that, so we know
Yeah.
if it makes sense to do it. Make a motion to table it, or if it doesn't, otherwise I will.
I'll make a motion to table it.
Second.
Motion and second to table item 6A on the ownership of future stormwater outlets pending some information from engineering and public works. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. And that brings us back down to item 10A, discuss approval of vouchers. Any questions or comments on the vouchers that were in your packet?
I move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Troy and second by Larry to approve vouchers as presented. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Correspondence, I don't think we have anything official correspondence. I did get 3 envelopes from the Arbor Trade Day Foundation. They killed a lot of trees sending me some mail, but that was about it. Future agenda items, I guess we can put the stormwater information back onto the mapping if that's available. Anybody have anything else at this point?
Well, yes, Jack, what would that, I mean, that would really be part of the budget
Okay. So if we're-
process. So, I mean, that wouldn't be finalized till December.
Okay,
So,
so we need to.
I mean, there's going to, the Conservancy Court will be discussed, the
Yep.
stormwater model, the maintenance of outfall. So
Maybe it's
it'll kind of just be, it'll be on all sorts of agendas, I
Okay.
guess, yeah.
For the budget cycle, all right?
Matt, is it possible to go back to our early conversation about that $362,000? Can you get together a list of specifically what that money can be spent for?
Yeah, there's a.
I'd appreciate, just so we have an idea, maybe there's something else that we can utilize it, that we're using tax funds now for. I don't know.
There's a resolution that was passed that says what they can be used for. I can send that to you all tomorrow.
Yeah, sure, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be helpful. Anything else for future agenda?
I have a question.
Larry?
I've had several individuals come up to me and ask me about development in the Cottage Grove area and the future plans for possible 55 and older type of development or complex. Because they're saying that they're looking for a place that, they want to downsize, sell their homes, move to a smaller, like, I don't know, a two-flat. Pardon?
Irwood Hills?
Yeah, like something like Irwood Hills,
Okay.
but out in a different area of town. Have we have any future plans in that regards? And because they've had friends that have left Cottage Grove because there isn't
Not necessarily condos, just houses or?
houses.
Okay.
Or attached, single-story
Okay.
dwellings
All right.
where they could buy into.
Yeah, good question to bring up when we have some developments come forward.
Okay, so,
See if we can
I don't know,
incorporate
how's that, I hadn't brought
Maybe
up on the
at plan
agenda.
commission would be the
It's
first.
going to be part of the ongoing comp plan discussions. We started talking about our housing chapter of the plan at the last plan commission meeting, where we looked at a lot of housing and demographic data within that. So between that chapter and the land use chapter, we can work to identify both the need and potential locations.
So would I bring my concerns up to the committee then?
Well, I mean, there's also 60 units coming on that are senior apartments that the Houstons are constructing right now.
Right, but that's more of like an apartment type complex, right?
I think.
That the Houstons are building right now?
Yeah. So
Well, these individuals are looking at that type of complex. More of a single-story, open area. that kind of-
More like a duplex type of
A
thing.
duplex type,
Yeah.
thing, yes,
Do
thank
you know
you.
what the next project the Houstons are going to do? And that, they still have some vacant land there.
They have some spots open for other apartment buildings, probably not the size of the one they're building
No,
now, some
no.
more similar to the older one that's there.
Okay.
Does it-
That's because that's a condo, the other one, right?
Believe so.
Yeah, closest to the trail, okay.
But I think, I mean, from a zoning standpoint, we don't say you're going to, this area is required to be a 55 and plus area within the village.
I
It's really
understand that.
the market that, these folks should really, talking to Andrew Humbert and others, saying this is what we want in the village.
I thought Irwin Hills was zoned that way.
That, area, I don't know whether it is or not.
Am I wrong about that?
Yeah, I think that, I don't think that they actually went with a limitation on, for 55 and older. There was, blanking on the name right now, there was one that we had, and that's gradually phased out over time, so.
Okay.
Okay, anything else for future agenda? Otherwise, I will make a motion at this point that the Village of Cottage Grove Village Board enters into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 1985, Parent 1, Parent E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public property, investing of public funds, conducting other specified business whenever competitive and/or bargaining reasons require a closed session, negotiate terms for potential development in Commerce Park, and also the listing price of former well site at 308 North Main Street and former lift station site on Violet Road. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, need a roll call vote. Troy?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
Doris? James?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
Oh. Okay, all right, we're in closed session. We can